On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Shadi Rostami. She is the Senior Executive VP of Engineering at Amplitude. We're going to be talking about fueling innovation and really along the lines of hackathons and how LLMs have really helped speed up the iteration in which a hackathon can go through. We're going to be diving into prompt engineering. She mentioned prompt engineering as a team sport, and I'm excited to kind of dive into those areas. Experimentation, how does the business outcome get affected by all this? Shadi, super excited to have you on to talk about all this.
Hello, Amir. It's very exciting to be talking with you and your audience today.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we start, let's do two things. Have you tell us what Amplitude does, and then what area of technology are you responsible for?
Sure. Yeah, Amplitude, we are in the digital analytics space. We're creating digital analytics platform. Our goal and our mission is to help companies build better product with data. So they can basically look at all of their user behaviors and come in and analyze them and figure out what's making some customers successful, when dropouts are happening, and use that insight to improve their product. They can also use that insight, activate that insight with our CDP offerings to take actions, send a coupon to somebody if they want to nudge them to do something. We can also use that insight and also take action on that by using experimentation, run A/B testing to figure out how to improve the product. That is basically what Amplitude does. And my role at Amplitude, I'm responsible for the entire engineering, security, and support at Amplitude.
I love it. I think we're going to have a really interesting episode. Obviously, everyone loves to talk about, Gen AI. I think we're going to be talking about a slightly different, tactical perspective, which I'm excited about. At the top of the conversation, we were originally talking about fueling innovation, and really the two areas that we had talked about were hackathons, research and development. And at some point you mentioned that LLMs have helped speed up some of the iterative process. And I guess that at the highest level, before we dive in, what does a hackathon look like when, for your team? Because I think they're run very differently. They have different, same meanings, but the way they're actually done are very radically different everywhere.
Yes. So at the Amplitude, actually, Hackathon is a very important ritual for us. We do it twice a year, and we spend the entire week every time. And, it's, some people might say, oh, it's taking time out of productivity of my team. We're taking 2 weeks off. But I really believe that it achieves a lot for us because it's a basic center of a lot of innovation. A lot of great ideas come that actually have fueled, went in our products after people have done and work on that in Hackathon. So a week, our engineers and product managers and designers sit down together, think outside of the box, figure out what problem they want to solve, and they go and work on this and come up with a great idea. The beginning of the week, we have a pitch day so people can pitch their ideas and they can recruit teammates for that. And at the end, we'll have a demo day that people show it. Actually, we're going to have our next hackathon in a couple of weeks, which I'm very, very excited for.
It sounds like the engineers get excited. I guess when you're getting ready for the hackathon and everyone's starting to, come up with ideas, what's the goal? Are you guys trying to tie to a specific theme? Is it find a business outcome? I guess what is maybe some of the core drivers of why people choose certain projects or features for the hackathon?
Yeah, so before I answer that question, maybe I tell you a little bit about one of our principles in engineering at Amplitude. We really believe in engineering owning the product experience. Engineer needs to understand the customer. We actually have engineers get on a call with customers and really understand the product that they're building, how is it impacting, solving pain, and creating opportunities for the customer. So I think having that perspective and engineers being really in tune with customer is very valuable. Actually, when we develop a feature, I always say that you have to have a customer development partner. If you cannot find a customer development partner to build the feature with, maybe it's not the right time to build that feature. The customer development partner are working with the team, giving insights, spending time because they really value that feature that is being developed. So with these basically rituals or these principles, we want our engineers to be very in sync. So that helps also they understand, oh, these are the other things that are on top of customer minds, or these are what customers are asking. Maybe we didn't have time or the bandwidth to think about them on our normal day-to-day and roadmap. And Hackathon creates an opportunity for them to work on some of these areas and these problem areas that they feel like are valuable to our customer. Of course, we have some teams that work on internal stuff too. You might be a platform team and work on something that is going to benefit Amplitude employees or Amplitude developers. So if everybody picks up what is exciting for them and they come and pitch that. And the important thing about our hackathon is that we try to leave it as open as possible. So I don't want to put it in a box and say you have to follow that. We have that culture that people have high sense of ownership. They know the customer. Then we let them, go however they want to come up with ideas, and we let them, go with that.
Interesting. I guess just to kind of follow up on that, as you guys are seeing the hackathons and you're seeing the teams, self-organize, they're picking their own projects. When it comes to, pieces of code or functions or functionality that actually gets pushed into the product, do you guys have any metrics around how much of the hackathon projects actually materialize into actual shippable code?
Yes, actually, I don't have necessarily a metric, but I can give you a lot of anecdote. We have had a number of features of us have basically started in hackathon. We recently launched an Ask Amplitude feature that is an AI based, so that you can come and using NLP basically ask a question and get your insights directly without going and creating charts and bells and whistles of the chart. That was done as a hackathon project. We have, a lot of our product lines. The warehouse native Amplitude started as a hackathon project, and a lot of features. So we have had a number of features that basically originated in hackathon.
You'd mentioned the LLMs are starting to play a role within hackathons and how people are going about setting up their projects and implementing them and incorporating them. Can you maybe give us a little insight in terms of what that actually means for you and Amplitude?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you a little bit of a background. So before the rise of the LLM, if you wanted to do an AI-based project, usually you had to go spend a few months, collect data. If it's supervised learning, label the data, create a model, fine-tune the model, deploy to production, and then look at the results. So it might take you 6 months or whatever to develop something that you can gain value out of that. What has happened with LLM and what's happened since last year that has kind of revolutionized the space is that you can achieve things that you used to be able to achieve in 6 months. You can achieve it in order of minutes or hours or days. Now you can just do prompt engineering. You don't need to go and train a model and fine tune the model and test it. You can just try to basically maybe fine tune something on LLM quickly with a much smaller data set, or just do basic prompt engineering and get that result. So that basically opened up a lot of opportunities. So things that used to take a lot of time can be done much faster. And that's very valuable if you want to do a hackathon and you only have 1 week to work on. So now you can really get that started. Actually, one of the things that we did at Amplitude, not only we have this twice a year hackathon, big log hackathon for our internal employees, we actually basically sponsored and created the external hackathon in June in San Francisco. We have about 150 plus developers, and designer and product manager came together, and actually 2 startups are founded out of that hackathon. These are for community. They came together. We also had one in London last November again that people came and did it. So again, because of the era of with LLMs and the fact that you can do prompt engineering and achieve a lot of outcome much faster, it opens up opportunities more for hackathon.
Can you maybe dive in? I mean, obviously, prompt engineering is all over. Everyone is hearing about it. It's a new job. It's a skill. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how that prompt engineering, some of the fundamental skills that you see your team using, and then how are those actually translating into speeding up? Because prompt engineering is so new, and you see it all over social media. People trying to teach you how to be a prompt engineer, but that's not maybe the same thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things that are important as you do prompt engineering, whether you do it for Hackathon or whether you do it long term for products. First is that you have to be thinking about prompt engineering as a team sport. You want the knowledge of different people. There's a data specialist that knows. There is a prompt engineer. There's a product manager. There's a product engineer. They all need to be working together to basically make sure that they have the good prompt engineer. Actually, we developed a tool at Amplitude for one of our projects. Basically, we developed a UI that people can come, they can come and change parameter, maybe add a line to the prompt or change the temperature or the retry on that. And then we also integrated on top of our experimentation product. Now you can do that change, and you can say that, okay, this is a variable, this is my control variable that I want to optimize. And let's roll this to this part of the population, and let's do A/B testing and see whether if I'm changing the prompt this way, is it really moving the needle, based on the outcome that you're saying, and so on and so forth. So integrating a way that people can come and collaborate, but also integrated with experimentation, so you can get that feedback loop is very, very valuable. The other thing that is important as you think about prompt engineering is that prompt engineering, because you're building on top of an existing model, right? So there is an LLM model, maybe it's an OpenAI, or maybe you have hosted your own open source LLM model, and you're prompt engineering on top of that. So it's possible that the underlying model changes. So you have done your prompting and you're getting good results, but the model, OpenAI, changes the model slightly, and they want to improve it. They're constantly improving it. A lot of time, the improvement should be in your favor, but sometimes the improvement and change might mess up with your prompt, and now you're not getting the output that you were expecting to get. So that's why I think we kind of say that prompt engineering is an infinite task. You have to constantly be on top of that. And, like anything that you do in software engineering, you have to have testing. You have to make sure that you have source of truth tests, that you put it in there so that, they're constantly running. If the underlying foundational model that you're using is changing, then you get notified, you take the action, you deal with it much faster before your customer get impacted if it's in production, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that I think these are the learnings that we have had as we did the prompt engineering. And another thing that might be important, whether you do prompt engineering or anything else, is think about, how do I measure the output of my model? How do I know whether it's good or is it getting better, and so on and so forth? That's also very important.
I guess you mentioned something about underlying model changing. And you mentioned obviously factoring that in. How do you go about detecting for that? Because obviously, the model might change frequently, it might change infrequently. What are some of the ways that you have seen people factor for those changes to be able to detect it, first of all?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, is that you have to have source of truth test cases that you constantly run them. Because you don't know, you don't know when the model is going to change. You don't know how it's going to change. So you have some sort of truth that this is what I expect to get. This is what based on this input, and you constantly run those things and see whether, and when it changes or when it is impacted, then you should get notified and you should come back and maybe I need to adjust my prompt and so on and so forth on that.
Got it. So I guess when you're looking for those changes and you're trying to fine tune for the feedback, because obviously you are getting output from the LLM, you're trying to test for those changes, you're trying to detect them. I guess the gap between production and when you detect them, what happens in that gap if you understand that there has been a change to the model? Is there any steps you take? Because obviously you're trying to protect the end user from any potential issues down the road before you detect it, or is there a way that you handle that?
Yeah, so when you detect something is changed, you basically, it's similar to when you detect, software engineer, you take one of your test cases as failed, right? So there are multiple ways to deal with it. When a test case is failed, sometimes you stop the build. So a test case is not going, your CI/CD pipeline is not rolling that change. So you stop the build. Sometimes you actually detect tests that are failing in production. Some tests that, and you need to go back. Okay, this code is in production. I need to basically work at it as efficiently as possible to fix that, to basically deploy the fix to the production. So, normal software development, we have always been doing that. We've always been doing, build time testing, and we're doing the production, synthetic testing to basically capture this. Similar things apply here too when you're using LLM. So depending on what you have, if you're using, for example, if you have integration with OpenAI and they change something underneath, so you cannot stop it. That's already changed, and you're relying on that. So if you detect a failure, you have to jump on it and quickly and figure out how do I. Maybe you can think about, okay, how do I reduce the scope? How do I fix it? Depending on what has changed, you can take different actions and different methods to deal with it.
At Amplitude, I guess a prompt engineer. Who does that look like? Is it somebody from the engineering team that has those fundamentals? Is it somebody external to the team? Or you mentioned it's a team sport because obviously it's pulling in different people at different times. But who actually does the prompt engineering?
Yeah, we have engineers basically, and the engineers again at Amplitude work closely with the product, with design together. But it's mainly the engineers, and they have built that UI that help facilitate some non-technical people who want to collaborate with them. But yeah, it's the engineers who are responsible for the prompt engineering and maintaining that.
Got it. When you're going through this hackathons, and obviously, you mentioned with the LLMs, you can actually speed up product development. You've seen some good results even externally to startups have been born of one of those events as well. When you're looking at the roadmap, and obviously it's a team sport, so you already have product and design incorporated. What happens to the roadmap if something really cool comes out of the hackathon based on one of the teams being successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, in the past, we've had that. We went to hackathon and there was a very cool idea that came up. And, I remember, at some point we added anomaly detection that came up from some of the hackathon. So, the way the things are structured, at Amplitude, we have a number of pillars that are responsible for different area products. So, and they have leaders on those pillars. So those pillars, let's say analytics or, CDP or experiment or other pillars, if there is a project that they feel like that is going to value their area, they go back and look at, of course, everybody gets super excited when we have the demo day and they see the results of all the work that's on hackathon. They go back and say, okay, how is it aligned with what I'm planning to do? Does it make sense to change my roadmap and add that as part of it, or should we do it for the following quarter? So it's a case by case, they do analyze it. And a lot of people who are actually working on those are part of that pillar that they were interested in those problems to begin with. So they're also excited about it. So they put all of that into account and they figure out what is the right time that this thing needs to be coming and being in our roadmap.
I guess, leveraging LLMs to speed up hackathons, it's pretty new. You guys are, early on it, you guys are leveraging it. Have there been any learnings in terms of, what experiences you've seen from some of the positives and negatives of using the LLM to speed up, iterations and getting things done faster on these hackathons?
Yeah, one thing that it's very important, as you develop a model, whether you use prompt engineering or whether you fine-tune a model or build a model from scratch, it's very important to basically evaluate the model. What am I getting? How valuable it is? And if you think about it, traditionally, when you put, of course, you can test it yourself and then you put it in production at some point. And when you put it in production, assuming that it passed your test and it looked good to you, you feel like you put it in production. So you can either ask your user, your general public who are working with it to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down to say, okay, whether the result that they're getting is good or bad. But a lot of people, like myself included, are too lazy to even put the thumbs up or thumbs down. I never click on that thumbs up, thumbs down. And I should be a better citizen and do that more. But a lot of people don't do it. And one thing that we learned, and I think is very valuable, is that instead of relying on basically people telling you, we should be looking at their action. So instead of, whether people are giving you thumbs up and thumbs down, decide whether what they're getting is valuable, let's see what they're doing with it. So for example, one of the projects that we did was Ask Amplitude. Again, Ask Amplitude is about that you ask a question, using NLP, you ask a question, and, what is my active user look like? What does my retention look like? We ask, a question, and then we go and we take that question using AI. We figure out what kind of analysis is interesting for to answer that question, whether it's a chart, whether it's a funnel analysis or a segmentation or so on and so forth, and then figure out the formula and the parameter and so on, and show the result. So, and we don't know whether it's actually answered the question that the user was asking or not. But if we look at it, what the user does. So, for example, if they go and save that chart, kind of implies that they gain value out of that. It's like they told us a thumbs up, the behavior. Or if, when they got that result, they see all of the parameters. If they go and fine tune some of those parameters and change something, it also gives a signal that maybe it was correct, but not 100% correct. And this thing needed to be adjusted. So getting that feedback loop and relying that feedback loop to be based on the user behavior, not based on what the user is telling you, has been very, very valuable and can help us to improve our model or improve our prompt engineering and so on and so forth to achieve better outcome.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's I see that. I see the thumbs up, thumbs down. I feel like I need to press it more on some of these products. It's actually a good point. We've covered a lot of areas within the prompt engineering with LLMs, even how the output gets used. I guess when you're looking at your engineers, your developers, and how they view the hackathon, their experience with it, for a lot of engineers, I think for most engineers, it's exciting. They get to work on new problems. There's a portion that also go, well, this is on top of work I already have to do. How do you balance that experience for developers as well?
Yeah, I think it's very important that, every team that basically we are doing quarterly planning and they figure out what they can do this quarter. And I always make sure that, okay, if you have a hackathon schedule for this quarter, don't assume that you have that week and don't put it in your normal planning. Because if you assume that I have that week, then people feel like, oh, if I gonna go and work on a hackathon project, then I have to work, off hours or something to basically compensate for that. So I think the first step is that make sure that your planning counts for that. And, you're losing 1 week of, maybe, I don't know what to call it, normal development. And you're basically investing that week on innovative idea that might be, turbocharging your product later on. But that's a decision that we're making. So it's very important that we account for that people, but there are things that you can't stop. For example, you have your on-call, during the hackathon week, you cannot stop the world. So, somebody might get paged and that is going to impact, and they might not be able to do their hackathon project because of the on-call issue that is happening. But that's the reality and the work, and you can't do anything about that. You have to make sure you support the production while hackathon is going. We try to basically don't do any planned work, don't do any other things, so people have all the space, but there's always going to be some unplanned that might happen if there is a major issue happening in production. People have to jump on it and deal with that.
Absolutely. Out of curiosity, when it comes to the hackathons, how does the engineering leadership participate? Do they go back and write code? Are they doing something else? What's their involvement?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. We were joking at some point. Maybe we should set up. A lot of engineering leadership. We all came through a little bit of a competitive programming background. We're saying maybe we should just let's just do a competition. We haven't done that. That has remained as an idea, but I'm sure I would not do very well anymore. I used to be a good coder, but I don't think I can do that very well. But yeah, so unfortunately, I don't get the time to go back and do a lot of coding. So I have all the other things that I need to be and but a lot of other leaders actually get involved and do a lot of good work during the hackathon and work with the team.
That's too funny. Yeah, yeah. I guess you could shake the rust off, but there's other things that you could do in the time. Final question for you. We're talking about the hackathons. We're talking about R&Ds. We're talking about LLMs that are speeding up this process so you can actually maybe bite off larger pieces of functionality. When you look at the business outcomes and you're looking at, especially a client, centered view of that, how does all that align in the end of the day to make sure that, all this, the cost that goes into having, 3-4 days of non-productive development is tied back to business outcome, tied back to obviously some kind of ROI that you guys are probably tracking or not tracking, but it's important to the organization, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, one of the things that I always say that engineering, the goal of engineering an organization to help us win as a company or increase our capacity to win. So whatever we are doing eventually needs to layer out to that. So business outcome is very, very top of mind for us. One other thing that I want to also add is that we talked a lot about AI and LLM and hackathon and so on. To me, actually, AI is not a strategy. AI is a tool. So, you have a problem. You have seen a customer pain as you work with customer and you want to solve that. And maybe AI is a tool for that can help you. Whatever before you wanted to make it easy for people to create charts and create the outcome, the calculation and the query. Now you can say, okay, I can use AI to make it easier for people to do that. So I think that's very, very important. And at the end of the day, I think it's come back and you look back and think about the business outcome. So what what products or what feature were basically started in a hackathon. And one thing that is important to also be aware that a number of ideas start in hackathon, but it doesn't necessarily is complete to go to production right away within that week. So the team will say, oh yeah, this is a great idea. We have proven some concept. We've proven that this can be done, but now we have to go through iteration, to improve it. So for example, the ask Amplitude that I mentioned, to be able to do that needed to go through a number of iteration to improve better, and we're constantly improving that. But yeah, so you have this thing that these ideas generated in basically the hackathon, but also you see that the outcome with all the other work that happened afterwards. Is it really moving the needle for that team? So every team or every pillar that I mentioned have a North Star. They're trying to optimize something. And these are the things that are basically tied to the business outcome. If you improve this, it's going to help retention. Or if you improve this, it's going to help acquisition. So people have North Star that basically tie their work to the outcome, the business. And, they can see, okay, which of these work or what was originated in hackathon that inspired us to come up with something that help us basically move the needle or improve our North Star. These are kind of the way that you measure and see whether we are getting the outcome out of it.
Awesome, Shadi. I was going to say I probably could keep. I could ask another 8, 10, 20 questions. I'm sure we keep going, but I'm cognizant of your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. If somebody wants to follow up with you, obviously you talked a lot about how you guys incorporate LLMs in the hackathons. If somebody does want to reach out to you, what is a good way of getting hold of you?
Yeah, I think the best way is LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn and myself and also Amplitude headquarters. These are great places that people can reach out to us.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to include your LinkedIn profile URL in the show notes. So if somebody does have a question for you, they can follow up with you and reach out to you there. Again, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. I'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, 2 things really. One, It's a really interesting episode. I think, Shadi and her team at Amplitude are doing some really cool things with LLM. Share this episode with somebody else. Hopefully they'll be inspired, and maybe they'll try to investigate and see how they can actually follow a similar path or pattern. And also share, like, subscribe, leave me a review. Let me know if you want me to cover a different topic with a different type of guest, and I'll do my best to find someone. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.